was the kind of audacious, daylight tragedy that doesn't just disrupt a neighborhood. It rewires the psychology of an entire city. Mansfield, a typically quiet suburb in Brisbane's east, is known for its family homes and fitness centres, not as the backdrop for high-stakes underworld manoeuvring. Yet, on a clear Monday afternoon, the serenity of this community was shattered by a calculated intercept that would trigger one of the most intense police mobilisations Queensland has witnessed in decades. What transpired in a public car park was not a random altercation, but a precise operation that left a young man's life cut short and sent detectives racing against the clock. For 5 harrowing days, the boundaries between the city streets, the quiet suburbs, and the rural hinterland blurred, as authorities launched a relentless pursuit to locate 4 men. These individuals were allegedly responsible for an ambush that was as coordinated as it was devastating. The focus of this intense investigation was 23-year-old Levi Johnson. To the public, his name might have been unrecognizable prior to September 2022, but within the databanks of local law enforcement, he was already a known entity. Levi occupied a precarious position in Brisbane's social strata. He was identified as an associate of the Comanchero outlaw motorcycle club, a connection that placed him in the orbit of organized crime, yet he was not a fully patched member. He walked the line between the civilian world and the rigid hierarchy of the bikie subculture, never fully embedded but close enough to feel its gravity. Complicating the narrative was his family lineage. Levi was the younger brother of Chernica Sugar Neeks Johnson, a world-renowned boxing champion. While Chernica built a legacy of discipline and athletic glory, her brother's path seemed to veer into more turbulent waters, eventually thrusting the family into the spotlight under the most heartbreaking of circumstances. In the weeks prior to the fatal event, Levi's life appeared to be a series of near misses and legal recalibrations. On September 1, 2022, significant charges against him, including attempted arson and dangerous conduct involving a weapon, were unexpectedly withdrawn. It seemed like a stroke of luck, a chance to reset. Just 5 days later, he stood before a magistrate and pleaded guilty to a drug possession offense, a minor stumble compared to the serious allegations he had just evaded. To an outside observer, it might have looked as though the storm was passing, that the legal tremors were settling down. But in the underworld, silence often precedes the loudest noise. While the court system had processed his files, a different kind of judgment was being prepared in the shadows. The minor legal victories were merely the calm before a devastating storm. The reckoning was not coming from a judge's gavel, but from a white Nissan Patrol and a black Audi A3, waiting patiently for him to make a move. As Monday, September 12 dawned, Levi Johnson likely had no idea that the clock had already started ticking on a timeline that would end in a busy gym car park. The sequence of events that unfolded on September 12 began with a deceptive normalcy. It was just before 1:00 p.m. and Pine Mountain Road in Mansfield was bustling with the typical midday traffic of parents, workers, and gym-goers. Levi Johnson was navigating his white Mercedes through this artery, likely unaware that his final moments of freedom were evaporating. Trailing him were 2 vehicles, a white Nissan Patrol and a black Audi A3. Police allegations later revealed that this was not a chance encounter. A group of 4 men had reportedly been conducting surveillance on Levi earlier that day, shadowing his movements at the nearby Carindale shopping centre. They watched him, waited for him to return to his car, and when he moved, they moved. It was a hunting party in plain sight. Levi appeared to realize he was being followed, and in a decision that investigators described as a desperate bid for safety, he turned into the car park of the Good Life Health Club. It was a public space, populated and open, the kind of place one might instinctively seek refuge. But on this day, there was no sanctuary to be found. As he attempted to maneuver out of the car park, the trap snapped shut. The white Nissan Patrol rammed his vehicle, effectively pinning him in. Within seconds, the doors of the pursuing cars flew open, and 4 men descended on the Mercedes. The sound of smashing glass pierced the air, as a crowbar was used to shatter the driver's side window. Panic took hold. Levi scrambled across the console and exited through the passenger door, sprinting across the road in a frantic attempt to escape. However, the pursuit was relentless. 2 of the men chased him down to a nearby intersection, where the confrontation turned physical and severe. One of the pursuers struck Levi repeatedly, inflicting catastrophic wounds that left him incapacitated on the asphalt. The attackers wasted no time. 3 sped away in the Nissan, while the 4th fled on foot after the Audi failed to start. Despite the rapid arrival of emergency services and their best efforts to administer aid, Levi succumbed to his injuries at the scene. The aftermath was a scene of controlled chaos. Police locked down the entire precinct, establishing a perimeter that froze the suburb in time. Detectives and scenes of crime officers swarmed the area, scouring bushes, bins, and the roadway for any trace of the offenders. What initially looked to bystanders like a road rage incident gone wrong, was quickly reclassified as the evidence mounted. This was not spontaneous. It was a targeted, ferocious act. While the community began to lay floral tributes near the site of the tragedy, Task Force Maxima Specialist Unit Targeting Organized Crime initiated a massive manhunt. The breakthrough was swift. Utilizing witness descriptions and tracking the flight path of the suspects, the Queensland Police Dog Squad zeroed in on a patch of bushland just a few hundred meters from where the attack took place. Approximately 3 hours after the incident, officers located 34-year-old Stuart Galloway. In a surreal contrast to the afternoon's violence, Galloway was found shirtless and sitting calmly in a park. He offered no resistance and was taken into custody. Initially, he was not processed on charges directly related to the fatal act, but rather for a suite of serious weapons offenses, including unlawful possession of a revolver and explosives. It was the first domino to fall in an investigation that was rapidly exposing a web of planning and intent. As the shock of the initial arrest began to subside, detectives turned their attention to the broader network behind the attack. The investigation quickly peeled back layers of the local underworld, revealing connections to a shadowy and relatively obscure entity known as the 13 Kings. Based in the Capalaba area, this group had been on the periphery of law enforcement radar since roughly 2013. They were not considered a dominant force in the established hierarchy of outlaw motorcycle clubs. But intelligence suggested they were attempting to carve out a more significant reputation. Police began to explore a chilling theory that the 13 Kings functioned as a feeder group, a proving ground for individuals seeking entry into more notorious and powerful organizations. The hypothesis was that one or more of the accused viewed the fatal assault on Levi Johnson not just as an act of retribution, but as a resume builder, a violent audition intended to earn full membership in a prominent bikie gang. Given Levis' known association with the Comancheros, early media speculation ran rampant, with theories of a brewing war between rival clubs. The narrative of a clash between the Comancheros and their traditional adversaries, the Mongols, seemed like a plausible explanation for such a public display of force. However, those with deep ties to the motorcycle club scene quickly moved to dispel these rumors. According to senior figures within that world, the alleged rivalry was non-existent. In fact, relations between the two groups were described as stable, particularly within the prison system, where alliances often supersede street-level politics. An insider characterized the tragedy, not as a club-sanctioned hit, but as a personal dispute between young men that had spiraled out of control. There were no patched members involved from either side, and the investigation increasingly pointed toward a localized conflict, rather than a systemic underworld war. While analysts worked to untangle the motives, the tactical teams continued their relentless sweep of the city. Just 2 days after the incident, on the morning of September 14th, the operation scored its second major victory. Specialist officers executed a raid on a residence in Birkdale, a bayside suburb east of Brisbane. The target was 34-year-old Luke Thomas Moore. The operation was precise and overwhelming, resulting in Moore's arrest without the chaos that had marked the initial crime. Later that day, he was formally processed and charged in connection with the loss of Levi Johnson's life. Alongside the primary charge, Moore faced additional accusations regarding dangerous drugs and unlawful weapon possession, painting a picture of a lifestyle deeply entrenched in illicit activity. By the middle of September, the scorecard read 2 down, 2 to go. However, the atmosphere within the task force was far from celebratory. 2 key suspects, 24-year-old Kyle Martin and 35-year-old Thomas Myler, remained at large. Police intelligence indicated that these men posed a significant and immediate risk to community safety. Public warnings were issued, emphasizing that the pair could be armed, and that any assistance provided to them would be met with severe legal consequences, potentially including charges of accessory to the crime. The hunt was now a high-pressure race to prevent further violence, with detectives acutely aware that desperate men often make dangerous decisions. The investigation was about to pivot from door-knocking to a high-tech game of cat and mouse that would draw eyes to the sky. The search for the remaining fugitives, Thomas Myler and Kyle Martin, triggered one of the most comprehensive police mobilizations in southeast Queensland's history. Over the course of the week, tactical teams executed raids on more than 40 properties, dismantling doors and turning over homes in a desperate bid to locate the pair. On September 15th, investigators struck a significant lead at a property in Ransom. Inside, they discovered evidence that suggested the fugitives were not just running but actively adapting. Detectives found remnants of a hasty physical transformation, clippings of hair, indicating that someone had drastically altered their appearance to evade facial recognition systems and public spotting. Myler, previously known for a specific short back and side style, was now believed to be clean-shaven or otherwise disguised. It was a clear sign of the psychological pressure mounting on the men. The walls were closing in, and they were trying to become invisible. The decisive break came on the evening of September 16th, fueled by a critical tip-off from a vigilant member of the public. This intelligence directed the Queensland Police to a residence in Wellington Point, a quiet bayside suburb. What followed was a masterclass in modern surveillance. Rather than rushing in immediately, the operation utilized the Polair helicopter unit to establish an eye in the sky. Earlier that day, authorities had already recovered the white Nissan Patroltha vehicle, allegedly central to the initial attack, abandoned on a street in Kapalaba. Now, the focus was on a white Mazda, leaving the Wellington Point address. From thousands of feet above, infrared cameras tracked the vehicle's journey in real time, as it traveled to a secluded property in Chandler. It was here, under the cover of darkness, that the helicopter crew observed activity that would later become a focal point of the prosecution's case. Police alleged that Myler, accompanied by a woman believed to be his partner, had driven to this location for a specific purpose: to purge incriminating evidence. The pair were observed burying multiple items in the ground, items that police would later retrieve and identify as illicit weaponry. Once the task was complete, the vehicle returned to the home on Skinner Avenue in Wellington Point. Having gathered the necessary visual evidence, and confirming the suspect's location, the Tactical Command gave the green light. Heavily armored specialist units surrounded the residence, sealing off any potential escape routes. The siege was brief. Recognizing the futility of resistance against such overwhelming numbers, both Myler and the woman exited the home and surrendered to custody. Myler was formally processed and charged with the most serious offense in the criminal code regarding the loss of Levi Johnson's life, alongside additional charges related to the possession of explosives and the unlawful use of a motor vehicle. His arrest, however, illuminated a fracture in the group dynamic. Intelligence gathered following Myler's capture suggested that the alliance between him and the final suspect, Kyle Martin, had disintegrated. Where they had once moved in coordination, the stress of the manhunt and the paranoia of capture had seemingly driven a wedge between them. Myler was now behind bars, facing the justice system without bail, while Martin remained the sole outlier, isolated, likely desperate, and rapidly running out of friends willing to harbor a man wanted for such a high-profile tragedy. The chessboard had been cleared of all pieces but one, and the full weight of the Queensland police force was about to pivot toward a single target. The final act of the manhunt played out not in the chaotic streets of the city but in the quiet, regional town of Warwick, approximately 150 kilometers southwest of Brisbane. By the evening of September 17th, detectives had narrowed their focus to the last remaining fugitive, 24-year-old Kyle Martin. The breakthrough was achieved through old-fashioned police work combined with modern tracking. Investigators had zeroed in on a vehicle linked to a woman believed to be Martin's partner. This car was observed traveling to a residence on Albion Street, far from the urban sprawl where the crime had occurred. Surveillance teams established a perimeter, watching and waiting for a sign that their target was inside. That sign came in the form of a mundane, almost trivial error. The woman was seen leaving the property to visit a local takeaway shop. It was a simple errand, but her purchase provided the confirmation police needed. She bought dinner for two, and paid in cash. In the world of fugitive hunting, such small details are often the undoing of even the most careful plans. Confident that Martin was inside the residence, the elite Special Emergency Response Team moved in. With the property surrounded and no avenues for escape remaining, Martin surrendered at 9:30 p.m. without incident. The woman was detained for questioning but released without charge, her cooperation noted by authorities. Martin, however, was transported back to the city to face the consequences of the week's events, charged with being the individual who allegedly delivered the fatal injuries during the attack. Despite the speed and precision of the arrests, the road to legal resolution has been agonizingly slow. More than 2 years have passed since the tragedy, yet the 4 men accused still await trial. The most significant recent development occurred on November 30, 2023, when Thomas Myler applied for bail in the Brisbane Supreme Court. The proceedings offered a grim window into the evidence held by the prosecution. The court was shown security footage of the ambush, which prosecutor Clayton Wallace described as depicting a joint purpose among the attackers. The footage reportedly showed Myler aggressively approaching the vehicle and striking the window, initiating the chaos that allowed the alleged physical assault to take place. While the defense argued that Myler was unaware a weapon would be used and offered a substantial $500,000 surety for his release, Justice Catherine Muir was unswayed. She ruled that Myler remained an unacceptable risk to the community, and a flight risk, noting the brazen nature of the attack in a busy public space. For Levi Johnson's family, the passage of time has done little to dull the pain. They have chosen to navigate their grief privately, avoiding the media circus that often surrounds such high-profile cases. However, those close to the family indicate that the raw emotion of that day remains, compounded by the frustration of a legal process that moves in inches rather than miles. The event on Pine Mountain Road was more than just a statistic. It was a public tragedy that exposed the volatile fault lines running beneath the city's surface. As the accused sit in custody, the story of Levi Johnson serves as a haunting reminder of how quickly the mundane can turn into the catastrophic. The sirens have long since faded, but for a family waiting for justice, and a city wary of the shadows, the silence that follows is deafening.